Okay, so now I want to walk you through the steps I took in finishing this little drawing, this little piece of artwork that we've made here. And so what we want to do is we want to shade for form and for cast shadow and for color, and we want to add texture. All right. So one thing that you'll notice here is that I've made use of what they call atmospheric perspective. In other words, it is darker on the top, darker at the bottom, and it gets light towards the center. And I really made this one very, very literal with our sun being right here, creating this light right here. And we have an actual horizon for the horizon line, so that everything was really straightforward. Okay, enough talking. Let's just go ahead and do it. So we've got this is the drawing that we've been working on, and it's nice and clean and beautiful because we retraced it over the initial sort of mess of a drawing that we worked on in the first place. You know, how much easier is it to start on something like this than it would have been to turn something like this into a nice, clean, finished drawing? Okay. In any case, what would I do? Well, I treat shading with a pencil a lot like I treat painting with a paintbrush. What do I mean? Well, I'm going to use the edge of the pencil here and flatten it out, and I'm going to go from the thing that's furthest back and work my way forward. Also, since I don't want to smudge the paper too much, I'm just going to work from the left to the right, top to the bottom. Just makes sense, right? Okay, so here we go. If I've got, let's say a sun over here, we'll just kind of rough that in real quick. And we've got our sky over here. So with the edge of the pencil, just shading. And if it was me doing this on my own, I might be turning the paper quite a bit as I do this. I was watching one of my other art teacher friends, and he was doing that in his video. And I was doing that more in my videos, and then I just saw that it wasn't real good as far as the optics go. But yeah, I mean, if I was working on this myself, it totally wouldn't be just straight down like this. I'd be moving it all over the dang place. Anyways, in fact, what I'll do is I'll move my chair a little bit. Okay, there we go. Now I'm at more of an angle. It makes it a little bit better. The point being, though, is that we want to just go across like this, because when you shade, you want to shade in the direction that your texture would go. So you say like, well, but Mr. Coon, the sky doesn't really have any texture. Well, that is true. It doesn't have any texture unless it has some clouds. So what you want to do then is you'd want to make it nice and flat. And that will create the direction. It will just be a very generic direction that we're going with this. And you can see it's getting lighter. And so that's one pass. So sure, maybe do it again if I want to make it a little bit darker as I come down. When I'm doing this, I'm shading with my whole arm from the shoulder, because it'd be very easy to arc if I was just using my wrist. But by using my whole body, all the way down to the shoulder and even beyond, maybe sometimes down all the way to my waist, then I can get a much straighter, much more controlled line, actually. All right, and so to make that a bit smoother, I could take something like this, just this paper towel right here, that works fine, or my finger, or a rolled up piece of paper, something, and I can just blend that. Blendy, blendy, blendy. And that's going to make that much, much smoother. And because I've gone just one direction when I was laying that down, it gives me the impression of it being very smooth gradient. Whereas if I was scribbling, going different directions or whatever, then it wouldn't have that same sense of order to it. Cool. Now, to give it a little bit of a special effect by the sun itself, I've got just the outline so light, you probably can't even see it, of where I made the little half circle for the sun, is that I'm going to actually shade around that. And what I'm doing there is I'm creating contrast. And so that will make the lightest part of the sun feel even lighter. And now I can take my eraser I'll go in here and I'll erase out a nice clean sun, sort of half circle shape here. And maybe so for another sort of effect, I can take my eraser and I could come out just from the center. Oh, there it is. Give it some light rays, just drawing from that center area, like spokes from a wheel. Some are going to be longer, some are going to be shorter. That's okay. Okay, cool. So I've kind of gone back and forth. I even darkened this up a little bit and then rubbed it out again a little bit, just back and forth, like I say. And so now I'm going to go ahead and move on to the water right here. And thinking that there'd be a little bit of a reflection from the sun, we'll just go ahead and we're going to come in from one side and then maybe in from the other side, but leaving it light as it comes down right here. That'll be kind of nice. That'll give us that sense of the reflection of the light coming off of the water. Notice once again where I'm holding my pencil. It's way back here when I'm drawing it. I'm not ever holding it as if I was writing my name. That's a whole different sort of skill. It's like treating the pencil like a paintbrush is really what it comes down to if you really want to do some good shading with it. Okay, and so let's see. Let's get it a little bit darker towards the bottom here. And let it be a little bit lighter towards that top. There. Okay. And do we want to erase anything out? Oh, sure. Why not? We'll give it a little bit of that magic with the eraser. Just a little bit. Not too much. Okay. Good. Enough, maybe. All right. So then the ground. Now the ground here, we'll make it a little bit rougher. So just think of the ground having texture. What's your ground like? Is it rough? Is it smooth? Does it have a bunch of pebbles? Is it a lot of dirt? Does it have like little scruffy plants? Is it sand? You just have to think about these things as you're making something. So this is going to sound really stupid, but here's the honest truth. If you want to draw the ground, be the ground. If you want to draw a tree, be the tree. I know it sounds really ridiculous, but it is true. It's true. And once again, that's where that observational drawing will really come in handy. Okay, so as I'm making this, what I'm doing is I want to have this house be up a little bit elevated. That makes sense, wouldn't it? And so I'm drawing these, the texture here, the contour lines, that's the word I was looking for. So I'm drawing the contour lines to follow the angle as if it was on a hill. Remember that up here, smooth and flat. Out here, even kind of smooth, even kind of flat as I'm drawing that. But here, I want to motion the ground down. And so that's why I'm following this angle as if this was, once again, on a raised surface. The ground goes up a little bit, which is what you would want. You don't want your house down in a hole. Alrighty. So as I get a little bit of shading for form in here, then I could add a little bit of detail. Maybe move my fingers up a little bit more towards the front of the pencil instead of having them back as far as what they were. Maybe sort of middle on this one, because I still don't want to be drawing it as if I was writing my name. I still want to be working back here on the pencil a little bit. Okay, and just getting a little bit loose, making a little bit of scruff, because my ground's a little bit scruffy. And here's an idea. What works really well is that, you see I've sort of set up a pattern here, is if you start reinforcing your pattern. Don't be totally random. A little bit random, that's okay. But try and reinforce your patterns. That's what will really make your forms a lot stronger. Okay, maybe a little bit of scruffy stuff. Who knows? Little bits of grass coming out. Something here and there. That just gives it a little bit more. And you know, it's a texture. So I'm not sitting here. I could sit there and try and draw little plants or whatever. But that's not really what I'm after. Maybe, hey, maybe that's your style. And in your drawing, you're going to do that a little bit more. That's okay. You could do that. You could draw a much more defined plant if you wanted to. But I'm afraid that's too much work for me. Okay, so anyways, we got that going on there. And then I'm going to also give it that atmospheric perspective that I was talking about. So I've given it some detail. I've set up the contours in here. Now I'm going to shade for both form and color, because I'm figuring this is not white ground. So I want to create the shadows in here. And the fact that the ground is, well, not white. Thinking that the light's coming from my sun, all pretty obvious, and shading accordingly. And you can see how here, darker here, lighter here, it's creating a mound, a form. If I ever wanted to, let's say, oh, it got too dark here. Hey, get out that eraser and start working on there. All of a sudden, look at that. We've got another mound in front of it. We've created another form. It all goes back to those principles that I talked about so much in that initial drawing lessons. It really does. And if I want more contrast, a more bold drawing, then I'll just reinforce and darken some of the areas. Just building up layer and layer of details. So even in my darks, maybe making some areas, and you can see now I really am holding that pencil down there close to the base, putting some darks into my darks that are even darker than my darks. And so that I'm using that whole value scale. The mark of a good drawing in some ways is, can you read it from across the room? If it looks good from across the room, then maybe you've really done something that's a little bit more bold. It stands out a little bit more. It's easier for your audience to appreciate. And you do that with values by using the whole value scale, all the darks to all the lights. Okay, and you can see by I've left it pretty light up here, haven't I? Pretty much darker over here. Once again, that's that atmospheric perspective, and it really is starting to look like it's coming forward here and going back to here. Okay, let's start working on this house a little bit. So as I approach this house, I got to think about, well, what color are the various parts of the house, and what